Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me for another episode of my show. Thank you for taking the time to watch another episode of Interviews with Entrepreneurs in South Africa. And today I'm very excited to be introducing Ronel Jooste, who is a financial consultant. And over to you, Ronel. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and your business.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me today. So yes, my name is Ronel Jooste. I'm a chartered accountant by profession, and I've been in the corporate world for almost 15 years before I've started my entrepreneurial journey at the end of 2015. And then I've started my own financial consulting and training company called Financially Fit Group. And there I basically focus on helping small to medium-sized businesses with their finances. So it's financial consulting, financial training. I also do employee wellness programs where I focus on the financial wellness, on the personal financial side of their employees. Also do a bit of coaching for individuals on their personal finances. And then I also own Physique Fit Guest House in Centurion.
Okay. And what made you make the shift from the corporate world to being self-employed?
Well, I think for me, the biggest thing was I was obviously climbing the success ladder. I really enjoyed it in the corporate world, and I've already been in a senior position with a big team reporting into me. But I came to a point where I questioned, what do I do? I'm having all this knowledge and experience built up over the years, and I'm basically doing the financial consulting and reporting for a big financial services group, but it felt a bit, I would almost call it empty to me, as if I'm not really using my knowledge and my experience to make a difference in somebody's lives. And there I've started to question it and said, but if I'm going out of the corporate world and I still have all of that knowledge and experience, and I can use that for smaller to medium-sized businesses, and basically help them to build their businesses and to really build a financially sound business. Because in the majority of the smaller to medium-sized businesses, they don't have necessarily that kind of knowledge, or they don't yet have the money to employ a financial director or a CFO or financial manager or something. And it can really help them if they have a solid financial foundation within their business. And I really had big success with that for my clients, and I think that's just much more rewarding, where you can really see a client is just their profits are increasing, and their revenue is increasing, and they are starting to really build a strong business that's just really kind of like in financially sound, and they make good financial decisions. They understand how to use their financial results to their benefit and to make better business decisions.
I know particularly for myself that I'm very good at dreaming up beautiful creative plans, but when it comes to the finances in my business, I want to run and hide. So I think you're delivering a great service. Do you find that a lot of creative entrepreneurs are frightened of their numbers?
I think the majority are, yes. I think people don't really enjoy working with the finances. I also think people do not, in a smaller to medium-sized business, I find that people do not always understand the importance of the finances within their business. I mean, if I think about, and I've had experience with working with the top 4 banks, the big insurance companies, investment companies, asset managers, all those companies who make billions, and they spend so much time on their financial management. And you don't see it in the smaller to medium-sized businesses. You know, I think they prefer to give it to an accountant, and then that's almost where their responsibility stops, and they do not really, they just rely on, hopefully the accountant will have the financial statements done and submit all of the tax returns and everything, and they don't spend a lot of time on their finances. And sometimes with a client, it's literally you make a couple of small changes to their business, and all of a sudden their results just explode, and they were almost like, but it's amazing, how does this happen? And you think, but if you've already just applied these principles, you know, like in 4 years ago when your business was just still much smaller, can you see what kind of difference it would have made? And I always say to my clients, or when I do webinars or so, remember, it doesn't help you chase sales and you chase business and you are doing marketing, but and you get the business in and you get the sales in, but those sales are maybe not profitable sales, or you are getting the money in, but then your foundation in terms of how you manage your money is not there. And then it happens that they get the business in, but they struggle to survive from month to month, and it almost feels that they are running on this wheel, and it never kind of gets better. You know, they literally have to chase business and sales continuously because they don't spend time on managing their money and put proper processes in place.
That's a very interesting insight. And do you find that a lot of them just work harder and harder to make more money without realizing that they actually, if they just slowed down and put the systems in place first, things would work out better for them?
Absolutely. I think sometimes, because what I see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is to get the costing and the pricing correct of their products and services, and even more so on the businesses delivering services. You know, they sometimes literally just look at what the competitors do, and then they kind of try to just put a bit of a lower price than what the competitor does. And they never put a lot of thought into, but how do I really price this product or this service? And sometimes when you just get that right, then the profit margins almost sometimes double up. And now where they still sell, you know, say for instance 100 products, but now they actually make double the profit on those 100 products, just because they start understanding, how do I cost my products correctly, or how do I cut certain expenses on how I produce or deliver that service or product. And it's sometimes really small things that can make a huge difference.
I speak to a lot of creative entrepreneurs and who because I've got a little a group on Facebook called Costing and Pricing Your Products for people making handmade products. And I've done a poll in there before where I've asked them what things do you include in your product pricing, and very, very many of them, the only thing they consider is the cost of their raw materials. And then when I say to them, but what about your overheads and all of those other things, then they come back with the response that if they had to include all of those things, nobody would buy their products. Now, what advice would you give to somebody like that?
I think it is quite often, it is, especially if you are starting out, it is sometimes like in touch and go, like in, should I do this? And I think our kind of natural pattern of thinking is almost kind of like, let me rather have a low price and then more people will buy it. And I think as entrepreneurs specifically, we tend to undervalue ourselves and undervalue our products and services. And then you sometimes find another entrepreneur who is not doing that, and they actually get the people paying their prices. I know for us at the guest house, when we started off, we were also, I mean, we were the new kid on the block. We didn't have any experience within the hospitality industry. And here we were, and we were trying to get guests. And we also thought, let us have our prices as low as possible. And in the first year, we really struggled to find guests. It was very quiet. It was a huge task to, just get guests in. And the one day, one of the guests came and he said, but your accommodation is excellent. Why do you charge so little for it? And we said, well, we were not sure kind of how much should we charge, because we felt, like we must charge rather a cheaper price. And he said, well, my thought immediately was there must be something wrong with this place because the rate is so low. And I think that is sometimes what's actually happening in the consumer or the customer or the client's mind, is maybe there's something wrong because the price is too cheap, or there's not proper value in that. And I think sometimes it's more kind of like in a mind shift change, because that's one of the things that we did from basically our first year to our second year. We have increased our rates quite a bit, and we all of a sudden had like in a lot of guests coming. We increased our revenue from year 1 up until year 2 and 3 with 200%. And it was things like that, which was almost kind of the opposite than what you would think, because you would sometimes think, but my product or service, I'm struggling, let me put a discount out or special offer. And that's not always the best thing to do. Sometimes you need to play with it and say, let me charge the higher price and test it and see whether it works or not. But it's also about going back to the basics and see kind of what's really, like you said, like in what's in my product or my service, how much can I really charge for it?
It's very interesting for me to hear that even somebody with all your financial knowledge and finesse still fell into that very human trap when you started a business that was outside of your field of expertise. That's very valuable insight. And well done for climbing out of it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think fortunately you kind of like because you have the financial knowledge, you kind of like say, okay, but there's something wrong here. But I think we all at the beginning, we all kind of, you are so desperate for business, and you're trying to, accommodate everybody. And that's sometimes more an emotional decision than it's really a business decision. And I think there you need to differentiate. You are here for doing business.
And I know that guest houses at the moment during COVID-19 are being particularly hard hit with the lockdown. How is that part of your business coping right now?
Well, that is absolutely true. I think we had a tremendous year going up or going into COVID-19. We really had in January, which is normally still a very quiet month for us, because we have more corporate clients. So our guests comes in more from March onwards. And so in Jan this year, we have doubled our revenue from Jan 2019. We had an excellent month in Feb, and in March, it was literally, we were still full that weekend. And then that Sunday evening, that speech came about declaring the disaster and all of that. And then it just went dead quiet. So it was literally, I think from then, it was literally, we couldn't have any guests whatsoever. So we have opened up for emergency travelers and business travelers, but it's quite quiet, there's not really any guests at the moment, or people really traveling for business currently. So we were affected quite heavily. And obviously you still need to pay the expenses, you still need to pay the water and electricity and the staff and the Wi-Fi and the maintenance and all of that. But I think what really helped us and what's pulling us through is the fact that we were in a good financial position going into this situation. So we had our emergency funds in place, those kind of things, So we've really put a lot of effort into our financial management of our business in the past 4 years. And I think that's really, I can see that maybe gave us that bit of a, I wouldn't really call it a competitive edge, but maybe call it that by the lack of a better word, so that we could kind of, during this period, we could still, pay our expenses and pay our staff, because we were in quite a good position with regards to that. And there, I think my biggest advice to both entrepreneurs as well as for your personal financial situation is to have an emergency fund in place. That is something that is of such tremendous value. And I mean, something like this can easily happen again, not maybe in this kind of how big it is currently, but it can happen to you in your individual capacity in terms of, being in an accident or getting really sick or something that you cannot work. And you need to think about these things. And I think obviously there's a lot of other things that you can have in place, insurance and all of those things. But with insurance and payment holidays and all those things, we're pretty much dependent on, whether you are compliant. It was dependent on somebody else's discretion. It was a lot of those things. But with an emergency fund, you are in control of that money, and you can make the decision when it's really an emergency to tap into that and to basically use that as your saving grace during a period like this.
That's such wonderful, valuable insight. Thank you so much, Ronel. And how are you preparing for when COVID-19 comes to an end and we kind of start to move out of this phase again?
Well, I think it is currently a very uncertain period for everybody, because we don't know, how much longer this whole lockdown period will basically last. And even if it ends, it's still kind of, we don't know how much longer will it take for business to pick up, and whether business will be, impacted more than you think, and it will maybe take years before it kind of recovers to where it used to be before we got into this. So it is very, very difficult to plan, and I think we also need to realize that our customers and clients and guests were most likely impacted as well. And when we go out of here, we almost need to keep that in mind, and we need to kind of be able to negotiate with guests and clients and guests or customers, and see, like in how we can also accommodate them in terms of maybe offering them some payment terms, or maybe like in a discount, or maybe something to help them so that they can also survive, because we are again dependent on, if they survive, we will also survive, because we can retain them as clients or guests.
Okay, that's great insight. Thank you. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about your financially fit group. How does that work?
Yeah, so I do a lot of different things, and it's sometimes depend from business to business. So sometimes businesses will have very unique problems, so they will get me in for a certain problem that they are struggling with, or something that they feel, they need specific help with. Say, for instance, we've talked a lot about the costing or pricing or something like that. So sometimes it's something very specific, or in a lot of the times they kind of just be like, in we are just stuck, we struggling to grow, we do a lot of marketing, we are hitting our sales targets, but we don't really move forward. And so it's, and then sometimes you do more kind of like in an overall review of the business model, the business processes, what kind of things do they have in place, and then you basically consult them with, in terms of things that they can change, or where there's areas for improvement. So it literally depends on the size of the business, the industry, kind of their unique problems. But then there's also, I do have quite a lot of more, standard type of things where people are more interested in, say, for example, cash management is currently huge, so I do have a cash management type of consulting package where I take people through what are the type of cash flow management strategies that you can put in place, how can it help you, how do you manage your cash more effectively. So we then kind of like can go through a certain process, either whether it's cash management, or it's sometimes how do they analyze their financial results, how do they really interpret the balance sheet and the income statement and the cash flow statement, and how do they use that information to make better decisions. So it depends on what the need is within the business.
Okay, and do you work with small one-man businesses?
I do. I sometimes find that the smaller businesses, they feel they don't have money for it, and they say, yeah, but we will wait until we are bigger, or until we have more money. But I also find that for the smaller businesses who do decide to invest in that portion of their business, and to get that financial management foundation set in their businesses, they so quickly, make that money back, and, really start thriving after that bit of help and assistance, because they just start thinking differently about their finances and putting all the correct processes in place. So yes, I do.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. And for those who don't know too much about kind of the financial side of their businesses, how do you differ from a normal bookkeeper?
Yeah, I think that is important. What people need to understand is that I'm obviously, I am a chartered accountant, so I do have a lot of accounting and tax knowledge. But what people don't understand is this: your accounting is a portion of your bigger financial management within your business. And I actually have done a webinar on this just within this week to explain to people that difference. And quite often people would say, but why didn't my accountant tell me this? And I think there people need to understand, you pay your accountant to do your reporting and your recording and your financials and your compliance and those kind of things, but you don't pay your accountant to be your financial director or your CFO or your financial manager. So your accountant will not necessarily look at like in what kind of financial processes can you change, or what kind of controls can you put in place that's actually making an impact on your profitability, because that's just not kind of within their scope. I mean, even if you look at the big corporates, you know, they have zillions of different financial management functions. So mine is more kind of like to look at your overall financial processes, where the accounting also fits into it. But for the bigger businesses who have accounting teams in-house, I work with the accountant there. So there we are almost teaming up between myself, the accountant, and the business owner, and we almost kind of like work together as a team on adding solutions to the business for the business to grow.
Thank you for explaining that so clearly, Ronel. And where will we find your webinars?
You can have a look on my website, financiallyfitlife.coza. Also on my roneljooste.com. I also have a YouTube channel, Ronel Jooste Financially Fit Life. But I do not always, all the webinars are not necessarily on the website itself. So you're more than welcome to email me. My contact details are on the website, and then depending on what your need is, I can give you the links to where I have my webinars.
Thank you, Ronel. You've really given us some very important insights and some very important information that I feel a lot of people watching can actually use. Do you have any comments in closing?
Yes, I would like to tell entrepreneurs, I think this is a very difficult period for everybody, and I think that's maybe what makes it a little bit better, in the sense that, you know, everybody is struggling, whether it's emotionally or financially. You know, there's been an impact on everybody in some kind of way. And what I said the other day is what makes this difference or different is that most of us have started our businesses from scratch at some point. So a lot of us might be in that position again after this lockdown period. But the difference is that you are much more experienced than what you were when you started out your business, and you can fall back on that experience and everything that you've learned. And I think the best thing is to kind of like get up from here, is to say, how can I put myself personally as well as my business in the best possible financial position and situation, that I will never experience the same kind of fear and uncertainty and stress ever again in my life, that next time I will be better prepared if something similar has to happen.
That's such great advice. Thank you so much. You've crammed so much value into this interview. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. It was lovely meeting you, Ronel.
It was a huge pleasure, and thank you for having me.